things that you should never sacrifice in a relationship. And I'm wondering if some of these points that we go through, to what extent do they still apply to us? Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. Welcoming back Robert Manni, the author of The Guys Guide to Love and host of Guys Radio and TV right here on YouTube. Thanks for being here again, Robert.
My pleasure, Silka. Glad to be here.
I think we have another interesting discussion today, Robert. Things that you should never sacrifice in a relationship. And I'm wondering if some of these points that we go through, to what extent do they still apply to us? So many of us are starting over again. And I think this is a good thing to look at. Anything you want to say before we get started?
Well, there's two buzzwords there, never and sacrifice. And I think that's a perfect place to start because, what was the song? Never, 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 never be beast of burden, something. So you got to be careful with the word never. And then sacrifice, I like compromise in a relationship versus sacrifice, because sacrifice means you're giving something up. And once you give something up in a relationship, it's like, oh, I gave something. Why do I have to give something up? You want a relationship to be additive, not like, oh, I had to give this up to get that.
Right.
It's not transactional.
No, you're absolutely right. It shouldn't be, yet somehow it becomes that way without us even knowing it sometimes. For example, the first one here, and I can really identify with this: never sacrifice your friends. Because once, all of a sudden you get into this relationship, you're all excited about, this new person, and you start pulling away from the people that you hung with, that were with you while you were single, and you start withdrawing. And I think this is something that maybe women tend to do more so than men. We could talk about that too. I know I tend to fall into that.
Well, you have to do what's more important for you. And you can listen, every situation is different. And if you have good friends and they know that you want to have a relationship, they should be very supportive of you and know that, of course she's going out with him because this is filling a need. This is something that's important to her, and we're her friends, so we're supportive of that. And she's still our friend, and she loves us, and she'll be around. So that's cool. It can happen. I've had it with friends where they're out all the time, and then a couple of guys I know, they got married, and then we're cut off. And I think the wives cut us off because we're bad influence. So I understand that also, but you want to maintain the friendships and stuff, and it has to be a balance. And again, every situation is different, but you shouldn't have to sacrifice your friends. So just be mindful. If your friends were with you when you were single, be nice to them because they were there. They had your back. Don't just dump them.
Yeah, it's interesting that was number one on here, and it is. It's prevalent. And I mean, like I said, I can identify with it. I mean, I still have all my friends. Do I see them as much? No, of course not, because all of our lives have changed. But don't sacrifice your friends, especially if that hurts them. So good point. Never sacrifice your boundaries, values, and standards. Standards for us, and then the standards of treatment, that how somebody else treats you. And that, especially as we age, we've talked about this on this channel a lot, is, are we too picky sometimes in the dating process? Do we dismiss people because of our standards? Are our standards too high? I think standards is actually a really good discussion. I think we've talked about it on some other segments. But what is reasonable and what is not? Especially as we get older, don't have that much time left.
I agree. In terms with with the standards, there's a difference between standards and a list. Maybe your list can be shortened to the must-haves, but that doesn't mean you're lowering your standards. That's something different. Now, maybe your standards are too high or unrealistic. Like maybe he has to have long flowing hair or something when he's 65, but maybe not. So that's not lowering your standards. That's just being adaptable and saying, hey, you know what? Things change. What's his heart like? What are his values like? What are his standards like? So I think it's a matter of, again, as with everything we talk about, every situation is unique, but don't compromise yourself. Don't lose yourself in your partner where you're
Yeah.
giving up who you are, what
Yeah.
you are, and what your value is.
Yeah, huge point actually for women. Give up your identity to where you don't even know who you are anymore. That is
Right.
absolutely, absolutely something that's I think more of a female trait. There was a whole movie on it. Anyway, we'll talk about that another time as well. Never sacrifice your passions. Another just such a great point, and I think this speaks to both. Is that sometimes, whatever it was that we're passionate about, be it some sort of sport or hobby or anything that takes some sort of time, and all of a sudden we feel guilty about doing that, or maybe not guilty, but we'd rather be with the new partner or whatever, to where we
Mhm.
give that up until we end up not doing it, and we forget that that's part of the reason they fell for us in the first place.
Well, I think it's a matter of, again, every situation is different. For me, I was in a relationship. I went out and golfed all the time, and my partner dropped off on the golfing circuit because she didn't like golfing with me, which I can understand. And then I just kept golfing all the time. And soon enough, I had plenty of time to golf because there was no
Mhm.
more relationship.
Yeah.
When I got married and had a son, I stopped golfing because I
Mhm.
know I go out to play golf, I'm gone for the day.
Okay.
And I didn't think that was fair to my wife or my son. So I put the
Mhm.
clubs aside and I know I'll get back
Okay.
there when it's time. But I
Mhm.
didn't give up my passion. I have no bitterness about it whatsoever. I made a
Mhm.
choice. I want to
Yeah.
spend time with my son. I want to be supportive of my wife. I want to be a good family man. And so it was easy to do. Because
Yeah.
golf, I can always play golf. And it's so I think you have to look at each situation individually and say, what's more important here? Maybe you're a runner like yourself.
Mhm. Mhm.
You and your partner doesn't run. Well, get up earlier and go for a run if you
Yeah.
want to, not lose any time with your partner, or go when they're at the end of the day, go out for a run by yourself if they don't run.
Mhm.
There's a
Mhm.
way to make it work. You just have to take that little bit of extra effort. You can find a way for most things to make it work where you don't have to give up your passions. And if you give up your passions and you're bitter about it, how is that helping anybody? How is that helping your relationship?
Yeah. It's
It's
not.
not.
It's not. That's the whole point. It just makes you somebody else. It kind of leads in what you just said, leads into the next point here. Never sacrifice your health. Now, what do they mean by that? Your physical health, but maybe even more importantly, your mental health. Is that if a new relationship takes you out of a routine that you have in place that's healthy, such as regular exercise, and say your new partner isn't, that could be a big red flag.
Absolutely. Like for instance, I do TM. I do it twice a
Mhm.
day. I've done it 150 days in a row since I was trained. The
Mhm.
positive part of my doing that practice, or anybody doing something that brings them pleasure or a sense of calm and mindfulness, that's a good thing for the relationship anyways. So,
Mhm.
we have to be careful to, take care of ourselves and be mindful of what our partner's needs are. But
Mhm.
the things that are we going to work when we work on ourselves, we can be a better partner in most instances, I think.
I think also when it comes to mental health, there are things that are just a lot more nefarious than just passion here or there. I mean, there is you have gaslighting, you have narcissism, and I think
Right,
that's
right.
one of the things that they point out here, is that if this relationship that you're in now, if it strips away the joy, if it's taking away your happiness, or just the way that you feel about life, then that's something to really look at. You would not want to sacrifice that. Never sacrifice, oh, this is so important. Never sacrifice your financial stability. And this is also for men and women. I mean, obviously, in a relationship, finances are a huge part of any relationship, and you want to be supportive of each other. But this in particular refers to early on. If all of the sudden this new partner has a need for a large sum of money because they, for whatever reason, do not. That's not your problem. Don't fall into that trap. Do not make your financial, don't risk your financial stability, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, because everybody handles money differently, but I don't think you want to sacrifice your financial stability for your partner, because what if the partnership, as many don't, doesn't last?
Right.
Uh, then you've screwed yourself. your relationship's gone and your money's gone. That's a double whammy. So you have to be strident about your financial situation and how you handle money. I don't want to say in spite of, but regardless of how your partner is, you want to have, I think that's a place where you need to have some boundaries because people spend differently. Some people
Right.
love living in debt and that's how they roll, like our government. You just keep printing money with no intention of paying things off. Other people are like they only buy when they have the money. That's
Right.
old school. That's it.
Right.
If everybody did that, we everything would be in a good place. But that's not
Yeah.
how it is. So when you have
Right.
partners come together, you many times you get one of each, and then you have
Mhm.
to figure out how do we make this work. And
Right.
so I think everybody has to be mindful, but never sacrifice. I would say this is one where never works, which is
Yeah.
you never want to sacrifice the way you manage your money.
Right.
Um, in terms of putting yourself in a precarious position for your partner. Now, you
Yeah.
might want to be more generous or something than you usually are. But when it comes to putting yourself in a bad position, that's never a good thing, particularly financially, because it's a
Yes.
risk.
Exactly. And at this point in our lives, there's so, we're most of us are living off retirement. So it's a definite concern. It
Right.
definitely something to think about, and just definitely don't put financial
Right.
stability at risk. Totally agree with that. Never sacrifice your dreams. Never sacrifice your dreams. Do we still have dreams? What came up for me here is early my very first practice marriage when I was 22. I was married to a sportscaster briefly, and he basically told me one day that there was only room for one journalist, or one TV personality in the family.
Oh,
uh,
geez.
and that just popped in my head when I wrapped it. And I actually, yeah, I know, I get it, because you're already doing this, you do this. I gave up on that.
Wow.
And
You should have said, "What are you going to do?"
well, we were, 6 months later, we
Right.
were kaput.
Well, 2 points there. One is don't give up your dreams, no matter what your age. Every day.
Mhm.
Listen, if you retire at age 60 and
Yeah.
you are healthy and you could live to 90, you might
Mhm.
not. You never know what can happen. But if you take
Right.
care of yourself, you have a good shot. You can live to 90. That's a third more of your life. They say retired, that shouldn't mean do less. You're freed up now to actually do more. So if you're passionate about something, this is a perfect time. You've got a big window there to do it
Right.
and enjoy it. So don't give up your dreams. Secondly, people last longer from the research I've done when they have a purpose,
Right.
when they have a purpose for being, that they're not just getting up and punching in the clock for the day. Because a lot of times when people retire, they go down quickly if they have nothing. They don't have a reason for being. That
Right.
some people are cool. They could say, "Hey, I'm fat, I'm lazy, I'm retired, I love it." That's great. But a
Mhm.
lot of people are like, "I don't know what to do because I
Right.
identified myself by what my work was. And now
Right.
because you're not this, you're that,
You
which is a
that.
diminished form of
Yeah.
what that was. And you've marginalized yourself." So it's very
Mhm.
important that we don't fall into the trap of losing our dreams. And look at the work you're doing. You're touching more people right now than you may have touched your entire life with the work you're doing. I'm doing
Mhm.
my thing, reaching out, touching so many people. This is really good.
Yeah.
So we follow our dreams, Silka.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. I'm back. I'm back. I have a show just like I wanted it. Which is, we
Yep.
did a segment on that too, that it's never too late to, be the person you wanted to be. And again, the whole other
Mm-hmm.
segment, but it's true. Never sacrifice your dreams. And what you brought up with retirement, it's so important that you're on the same page, what retirement
Yes.
looks like to you, because
Yes.
that
Great
could
point.
absolutely make one person in the relationship at least miserable if they have
Another
to,
segment right there. I love
another
it.
segment. This is interesting too. Never sacrifice your independence. And what he points out here is, it's not, obviously you're going into, or obviously maybe you're not going into a monogamous relationship, but there are boundaries associated with, being single and then being coupled. Controls. If somebody is just taking control over your life to where you literally are restricted in movement, which happens again so much in when we talk about narcissism and that kind of thing, it's really important to have your antennas up, isn't it?
I think it's hugely important at any age, but specifically for the 50 plus crowd,
Yeah.
you don't want to be controlled at that point. You paid your price, you've made your mistakes. Maybe you gave some of your power away in the past, but now's the time to
Yeah.
reclaim your power and be who you really want to be. And
Mhm.
never give, for people over 50, never give that away. And particularly in a relationship, because that'll just bring about your
Mhm.
demise because you'll be
Yeah.
unhappy. And if
Yeah.
you're unhappy, what do it just doesn't make any sense to me. I can see how people fall into that rut because you're with a partner who can be overbearing or manipulative or gaslight you or
Mhm.
whatever, but you have to
Mhm.
be really careful. And giving up, as a writer says, giving up your independence doesn't mean you're not in a relationship, but it means
Right.
you still need to be who you are as
Right.
an individual person.
A great point. We probably don't think about that. When we're going to a relationship, of course we give up. We're not single anymore. But the independence, there's a lot more to it than
Yes.
being monogamous anyway. Then finally, Robert here, never sacrifice your intimate needs, and that is a lot more than just sex. Sex. We talked about that a million times as well, but true intimacy, true connection with someone, that's again a tough one to measure, but important to focus on.
I think at any age, it's important more so than ever, as with a lot of things we talk about after 50, you want to have that type of intimacy where there's an emotional intelligence that's available. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's intimacy, that when you're comfortable, that you can share how you feel about certain things and allow yourself to be vulnerable. If
Mm-hmm.
you can't do that, and again, I'm not talking about sex, but it could include sex. If you feel like I can't talk to my partner about this, think about, why can't I? Am I going to be judged? Is this
Mm-hmm.
something I'm asking that's wrong? And if the answer is I don't feel comfortable talking to my partner about this or that, unless it's something a very specific with a very specific reason, you should be able to talk about anything with your
Mm-hmm.
partner when you're
Mm-hmm.
over 50 and you're in a real partnership. And if not, you got to ask yourself why, and is that an issue?
I think a lot of us, and maybe even at any age, we don't want to be alone. And if it goes back to maybe standards, at what point are you sacrificing a potential relationship? When is good enough good enough? I think that is important as well. So by no means, I guess we're coming to the end here. Do I want to say that, everything we talked about today, these are like must do things. I think there's different degrees to all of them. And then you do think about when is good enough good enough.
Final thought there would be, let's discard the word sacrifice and replace it
Mhm.
with contribute. So
Yeah.
instead of what do I have to sacrifice to make this work, what can I add to this relationship
Mhm.
to make it work? So it becomes additive instead of subtracting. And that's a good place to start. But you never want to have to be giving up things that are important to you to make a relationship work at any age, particularly when the clock's ticking. When you're over 50, you really want to enjoy. You want to cut the nonsense out as much as possible and have a real relationship and intimacy, emotional connection, sexual connection, whatever. You just want to be on it because the clock is ticking to a certain extent and you want to
Yeah.
enjoy it and share it.
Absolutely. And again, I look forward to the comments on this. I know a lot came up, from me when I was reading this, and I'd love to hear some of your stories, some of your input and examples. And Robert, again, thank you for your time. Always enjoy talking with you. I will link to all of your information to your radio show on UK Health Radio, Guys Radio, Guys TV, and pick up there it is. The Guide to Love. And Robert, I look so forward to talking with you again soon on Second Act TV.
Me too. Thank you so much, Silka. Thank you, everybody.